Hello, and thanks for joining me. I'd like to take some time to talk about AdChain. AdChain is a blockchain-based protocol tailored specifically for the online advertising industry, and AdChain unlocks the blockchain for digital advertising. We're doing this because the online advertising industry is in trouble. It's in trouble because collectively every day we face fraud, and fraud exists in many different forms. A lot of the industry's hard questions are going unanswered, and we develop tools and technologies to help combat this issue. However, we seem to be losing the fight. And the IAB puts the cost impact of fraud right around $8 billion. And many of us in the industry would say that that is a very conservative estimate. And as we continue to look for the source or root of the problems, we may not be looking deep enough. And our industry and all the technologies that we've developed to power our ecosystem have been built on a fundamentally open and decentralized system, which is the internet. And the internet has evolved significantly faster than our industry has. And as a result, gaps have formed. And these gaps are being exploited. Our industry is unregulated, which is great because we get to push innovation and technology. However, without a central market and standard guidelines or holistic measurements that we all agree on, we have this inability to coordinate. And without coordination, we have discrepancies. And with the lack of transparency and accountability, these discrepancies oftentimes go unresolved. And that's another part of our problem. And these problems are exacerbated by our industry's continuous growth. We have multiple channels that we use to deliver advertising messages. And these messages exist in many different formats. And we use different protocols to execute on these digital advertising campaigns. And this causes continuous strain on an already flawed backbone. Now, what does all this mean from a practical standpoint? So we get it, there's a lot of problems. And here we look at a diagram that represents a programmatic advertising supply chain. And as you can see, there's limited visibility into the supply chain. There are technology providers that help with this. We call them safety vendors. And these safety vendors provide measurements around viewability, whether or not these ads have been seen, measurements around bot detection, is this a legitimate advertising impression? And these services help. However, they're working with a limited data set. When you look at the entire supply chain, if you can't run your scripts on a complete ubiquitous data set around a single impression event, you're having to make assumptions. And because of this, the results of the safety vendors' findings have varied widely. Another issue we're looking at here with the programmatic supply chain is malware. Malware is malicious script that is injected somewhere in the supply chain. Essentially, this malware piggybacks on all of the ad delivery systems involved in the delivery of this advertisement and infects the end user's machine. And it's done for multiple reasons, few of which are ever positive. And this malware can load ransomware, nuisanceware, as well as botnets, like the recently discovered MethBot. So this is kind of a scary ordeal. And if we don't do anything, if we continue down this path, we jeopardize the ability as an industry to self-govern and self-regulate. Our industry will continue to lag behind the pace of innovation of the underlying internet. Fraud will continue to be a problem, and it's inevitable that another botnet like MethBot will be discovered. And the end user will continue to vote and voice their opinion by using ad blockers, as the end user experiences no upside in the current system. So the system clearly needs an upgrade. We can't continue down this path, as the logical conclusion is the instability and unsustainability of our industry as a whole. And when we look for the upgrade to the online advertising industry's backbone problem, we see the blockchain, which is the underlying technology of popular digital currencies like Bitcoin, as the optimal solution. You can think of the blockchain as a shared ledger or a new type of database. And this database stores all of the relevant performance metrics and data around a single. Now, if we were to follow along the flow of a peer-to-peer transaction through the lens of blockchain and in the context of advertising, we can imagine that the advertiser wants to deliver their message to their target audience, and the advertising impression in which the user sees this ad is encrypted in the protocol or trade level. This impression event is broadcasted across the entire supply chain, which can consist of multiple entities, and each entity verifies that this impression event has occurred. So it's cryptographically secured and cryptographically signed by each self-interested business entity involved. And what this does is it allows for holistic measurement around the performance of advertising campaigns. Therefore, we can resolve disputes and we can coordinate around a single and shared source of truth. So these advertising impressions are added to this ledger, and that is the ad chain. And this allows for the clearing and settlement of impression events. So that is the blockchain. And again, the blockchain is consensus and participant driven. It's updated by consensus and only by consensus. It is cryptographically secure and immutable. So any data that's being stored in AdChain cannot be doctored in any way, hacked, or manipulated. It is certain and verifiable. This is saying that 1 + 1 = 2. So mathematically, we can prove that this decentralized way of storing data is secure. And also, it can be seen as the source of truth. However, the blockchain can't be the solution because the blockchain doesn't scale. To give you an example of what I mean, the Bitcoin blockchain can only process 7 transactions per second. And for our industry, that simply won't work, as we need to process trillions of events. So blockchain is the upgrade, and we're introducing AdChain as the solution. AdChain allows for a scalable blockchain solution without having to jeopardize the integrity of advertising data. And how do we do this? First, we want to make sure that AdChain is adoptable by the industry. And we are seen not as a bot detection provider or an impression clearing solution. We are really a utility that allows for the automated coordination and ability to operate in a healthy ecosystem, but also not have to trust every single person that you interact with in the supply chain. So the first phase to implement is beacon tracking. And this allows all of the entities within the ecosystem to continue to operate in the same way they currently are. We've also been working on developing a domain-specific language we're calling AdScript. You can think of AdScript as the common language between the advertising industry and the blockchain. So what this means is the industry can adopt and build on top of this AdChain protocol without having to learn a new blockchain language, like Solidity, for example. And in order to scale this technology, we've developed what we're calling the AdChain Matrix. The AdChain Matrix is a cryptographically secure event processing and verification layer on top of the public blockchain. And this layer allows us to execute massive transaction volumes while maintaining the integrity and security of the data. Now let's revisit the programmatic advertising supply chain and see how AdChain can help with transparency. With simple AdChain beacon tracking, all of the events that fire in a campaign are cryptographically secured, processed and stored, decentralized in the AdChain database. The safety vendor can run their proprietary scripts across a complete data set. Each entity in the supply chain is verified and also verifies the impression event has occurred. All entities now coordinate around a shared source of truth. This has the ability to eliminate fraud in a number of different ways. For example, if a safety vendor runs their proprietary bot detection script across a complete data set, looking at information that's ubiquitous across the entire supply chain deems that the impression event is illegitimate, then they notify their vendor partners and exchanges to say this is illegitimate and the ad is not delivered. AdChain is a technology that offers the entire industry a platform in which it can coordinate on and provide a shared source of truth that can't be doctored and is decentrally owned, so no one has to be trusted as a source of truth. This is an ability to align incentives, and for the first time, we can combine forces and put an end to fraud. We've learned from our past mistakes. The solution can't be fragmented. We already have governing bodies that we trust, and this is the technology that allows policies to be enforced, so those who add value to the supply chain can thrive, and independent players in the industry can continue to grow and add value. AdChain is this underlying technology. Blockchain is the solution. And we are really excited to share this with you today. And we hope that you've enjoyed learning about AdChain and how this new technology can put an end to fraud. Thank you everyone for listening. And if you're interested in learning more, please don't hesitate to reach out at hello@adchain.com. Thanks.